Welcome back to Impact Podcast. It's Jeremy Melton, Daniel Brown, and Maddie Atkinson. We are here to talk about leadership for the next hour or so, maybe half hour. But our highlight question, what kind of impact are you making on the world that we live in? And our goal on this show is to hope to create or generate a desire to understand it sooner than later. This week is episode number 8, I believe, and we are talking about the mandate of clarity. The initial mandate was, we talked about the mandate of clarity, but essentially it's clarity in communication, right? So we're going to talk about how important that is. Last week, let's talk about last week real quick. We talked about, I think we interviewed my brother last week, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So y'all, you got to meet Brandon Holtzinger. Let's do some takeaways. Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I was a spectator on this episode, and
Yes.
probably not as engaged as I should have been, as you know, on the other side of the camera. But man, he had a lot of good stuff to share about his journey with his faith, and that part of it was really inspiring to me.
Right.
And maybe some of that was said off camera afterwards, if I'm not mistaken, Jeremy. But just the relationship that he's got, and very, very, very new is what it seemed like and sounded like to me. But he definitely, as a leader, he's you know, learning a lot and embracing that learning in his journey. And it was just really great to talk to him. I hadn't seen him in years. So
Yeah.
it was a good time.
It was somewhat of, I'll call it a revelation to me. I had not, I mean, really, he's my brother, but he kind of got intimate, especially after the podcast, which was really cool.
Yeah.
About his faith. And so I enjoyed that for sure. Maddie, what did you think?
I thought it was clear to me when you, one of the first episodes, I think you said that he was the most humble person that you knew.
He's one of. Mm-hmm.
And it was just clear. He was just so humble. You know, like, I mean, there's just people that exert that. And
Well, you know, several times during the podcast, he would just say, I mean, I think he even said, I'm a dummy. If you were to quote him,
100%.
I'm a dummy.
Yep.
And how many people do you hear say that, especially in the form of leadership that he's in? You just don't hear that often. And look, it's not fake. It's genuine.
Right.
And he's not a dummy by any stretch.
Right, yeah.
But the fact that he embraces that, look, I don't know it all. Everybody knows more than me. It's really, it's humility defined. Mm-hmm. And
right.
so, yeah, that was good. So I hope one day when people are asked about a takeaway from me that they say that about me, right? That's what we aspire to. So very good. So my takeaway was that. I was going to say that as well. And also that his leadership had changed through the years. That was a pretty big deal. And he talked about how he evolved in his leadership. He talked about, he was real quick to talk about the people that got him there too, which the coolest part of what you do as a leader is you later on down the road, you give credit back where credit's due. Mm-hmm. And that's, in my opinion, that's one of the coolest things. Go ahead.
one thing I said last time, and it was off camera, we weren't recording, was leadership is living.
Oh, yes.
I
You
just
did.
remembered that.
And we said, hey, that's another Maddie quote.
Yeah.
That's some of that good stuff that comes out of Maddie. You know, exactly. It is living. And I think I even I posted that on Facebook like the next week.
And to clarify, you meant like you feel it like it's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, like when I think of living, I think it's ever changing. Like, you know, it's like I like how your brother talked about his leadership over the year has changed, and
it's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
it's a great way to put it, and it's kind of the same thing that Jeremy's kind of said is like you never stop, you never get to the finish line. It's never done. The work is never done. To be a leader, you have to continue trying to be intentional about being a leader.
There you go, intentional.
There we go.
And then we talked about relentless, all these cool words. But so look, that was a great time last week. Next week today we're gonna teach, right? And then next week we're gonna have Nick Austin. So actually gonna have the guy that taught Brandon and the guy we were talking about. Mm-hmm. He's gonna come next week. Yeah, so we're excited about that.
Good.
Cool. So, all right. So kicking off here, we're going to talk about clarity and in communication. So somebody tell me a definition for clarity.
Well, clarity was the second mandate of the list of mandates that we went through. Mm-hmm. And you expressed it with you tell them how to do it, and then you show them how to do it. And then what, did you do it twice?
You let them do it.
Yeah.
Go through it again.
You tell them, you show them, then you have them show you, right?
That's right.
And so we'll get to that in this today. The fundamentals, what we call the blocking and tackling. We're going to get to that. So, and we'll actually teach it again. So I think I had alluded to it then, but we'll go over it today for sure. Go ahead, Maddie. What, do you have something? Mm-mm. Okay, so clarity is the ability to convey a message without confusion. Right? It's kind of simple.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but oftentimes people are not clear. And one of the biggest things about leadership is that if you're not clear, then you're not going to be leading, because people get confused, and where there's chaos, there's no leadership, right? So it's funny, just you can pick out clarity in everything that you do, and with your kids or with work, or if you ever have a task that needs to be done and you got multiple people doing it, you can figure out real quick how important it is to be clear if you want to execute it good, right? So,
and I think I said this before, but I feel like this is one of my weak points as far as leadership goes when it comes to clarity. And I think it's just part of me, like making expectations, but just trust. Like when I lead, I just want to say like, hey, do this, and it's okay to do it your way. But some people would do better and even like it more if I was more clear and like exactly laying out what needs to be done and what's expected.
Oh man, look, dude, people love to be told clearly what to do. And look, I'm not a doctor, but when you're told, hey, do this, or you're asked to do something, and then you do it and you succeed, I mean, there's a chemical release, right? So it's just, but being clear is always a helpful part of that. And so it's but the fact that you acknowledge that it's something that you should work on is good. Yeah. Right? That's humility.
It's something I've been thinking about, like something I want to be better at.
So, and look, a lot of people say repeat, right? So, and we'll talk about that. But repeating what you've said or asked to someone to do is part of it. But it's not all of it. But being, repetitive about it, but you can get too repetitive as well. So, all right, so let's talk about the communication piece first. So the first thing we have to do is establish that there's 4 major categories of communication, and that's what there's 4 categories: verbal, nonverbal, visual, and written. Okay, so the ways that you communicate things change based on the circumstances that you find yourself in. Okay, and so if we're going to communicate verbally or non-verbally, which I don't know all the statistics, whether it's 90% of what you communicate is communicated non-verbally, but a lot of what you communicate is your demeanor, eye contact, and looking and talking, and your hands and stuff, so forth. But visual communication and written communication. But there's 4 types, and we participate in them every single day, especially leader. So, in communication, in those 4 things, you're going to have the things that I've written down here that I would say that needs to live inside the leader, okay? And this is, number 1, clarity. Number 2 is confidence. Number 3, you need to be complete, right? And clarity and being complete is 2 different things, because you can be really clear on half of the request and leave some stuff off and make a mistake. You need to be consistent in your communication, and you need to be courteous in your communication. Mm-hmm. Any of those things, if one of those is not there, then the leader has not done their job at presenting it properly. Okay, so again, it sounds trivial, but as a leader, and if you're listening right now, if you're going to communicate a task or a request to people that are reporting to you, you need to be clear, confident, complete, consistent, and courteous every single time. And so, how do you remember that? I don't know, but I can tell you that when I read and somewhere I got this out of a book. I told you I don't ever take credit for anything. Yeah. This is duplicated, but somewhere, wherever I got this from, I actually, in my leadership journey, sat down and began to figure out how to say things in this order, okay? Fundamentally, how do I present this problem to these group of folks and cover being clear, being confident, being complete, being consistent, and being courteous? And then once I realized that, man, that's working, right? And then you just duplicate it. So it's almost like building that muscle. And reps is how you build muscle, right? So taking your time and doing those things. Can you guys think of a time where you've had someone communicate something to you, a leader, that did not do those things and it resulted in chaos? Anybody? Anything?
All the time.
Give me an example without incriminating anybody.
I know, don't know.
I'm struggling to find a specific example, but I'm really like enjoying this list, and I like can totally like I feel it, and just like you said, like be clear, be confident, be complete, and I loved it. Like you said, like I'm gonna go through each one of these steps, and you notice the difference. And
oh yeah,
like I'm sitting here, I'm writing this stuff down. Like I want to do this stuff.
Well, one of the things that's hard for me, like even at work, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but consistency is hard. I think it's like we go on these trips and you go to like a conference or something, and then when you come back, you're just rejuvenated, and you're like ready to be a leader and you're ready to do all that. And then you have so many aspirations, and then like 3 months in, you just start going down and it's just not consistent. So then, you have the first few months, you're just on it. You're game on, you're ready. And then it just kind of starts trickling away. And the consistency of, communicating well and, getting the team together for, uplifting team building activity, it just goes away.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a little bing in my head, the consistent part. And I've got some experience with like having to report to different steps of management in the same company, like multiple people telling me things like this is how we want to do it, but they're not on the same page,
right?
And
That's
they're telling me different things, and then it gets to a point where like
it's not consistent.
I can't. Who do I gotta choose someone to actually follow,
yeah.
and I mean.
That's a good one.
Who's writing the check? Okay. Yes.
That one.
No. Let's do that.
Yeah.
That's good. So look, we're going to unpack these a little more, and this is where it gets fun. Okay. So when you're talking about clarity, I said there was 4 types of communication, and inside of those, there's 5 ways that the leader is responsible for communicating. Okay. And so each of those ways can be done in each type of communication or form of communication, but we're going to start with clarity. So at the end of the day, it's important to be clear, right? Period. We know that. But be clear about what? What should we be clear about, right? Because you think, well, what are we being clear about? Well, I ask y'all or someone to do something, and, what are we doing? There's a purpose, right? So there's a reason that I want you to do that. So the first thing you want to be clear about is the purpose. And a lot of leaders don't think that. They think, well, it's because I said so.
Right.
And it kills me when people, look, my mama used to tell me that when I was a kid.
Oh.
And look, at the end of the day, she's probably right. But that's not the real reason. Like, you don't want me to do that because I said so. Well, that's not. Think of something else, okay? Because what's the reason? It's because I don't want to break my leg. You don't want me to break my... Yeah, okay, well, just tell me that, right? So, and I'm picking on my mom. But look, I heard this teacher one time, and he said, don't tell your kids that. Uh-huh. You want them to understand why they're not doing it, not because you said so.
That's so hard.
Oh,
not
man,
to say that,
it is hard, but it's so important. Look, if you don't hear anything else this whole podcast, don't tell your kids that.
No.
Really.
And I was just having this conversation with somebody else, and it's like, yeah, don't tell your kids because I said so. And there was something that I took away, and it was something about let these kids understand why they are living the life that they're living.
Yeah.
And give them the perspective that
Absolutely.
they deserve.
That's right. You don't want them to, because I said so, you want them to ask the questions. And if you always say, because I said so, they're never going to ask the question.
That's right.
So just like you want your kids to understand why they're doing what they're doing, you also want your people to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So, no, we're not doing that at work anymore. We're doing it this way. Well, why is that? Well, it ain't. Never tell them because I said so.
Yeah.
Always give the purpose. So, again, the first part of being clear is being clear about your purpose and communicating that. Okay. Another way to be clear is to be short and concise. Simple, right? So, and I'm trying to think of an example. If you guys think of one, stop me. But think about short, simple communication. Anytime you have a big task, you don't want to go around mumbling and bumbling a bunch of words and all, just unnecessary words. Just get to the point, okay? Because
what it takes me to is like, and I know it's not management that we're talking about, but management is leading, and we've established that.
Sure.
But the difference between managing and micromanaging, that's kind of where it takes me. Like, keep things simple, keep things concise, have trust, and don't try to nitpick every little detail. Keep it simple. Like this is what we're doing. Other than that, do it your way. But that's, like I said, that's kind of my weakness and where I struggle. How much direction is needed? And where's the balance? There's a balance.
Well, and the way to do that, and this will come out later, but you always be curious as a leader. And when you say, well, how much, I don't want to micromanage. Lord, I do not want to micromanage. And so, look, along with the seasons in a leader's life and a leader's journey, he changes. At the same time, he has to be able to lead in different ways based on the call at that time. Okay? And so I'll tell you, it's kind of like we get a new sheriff in town. He's got to come in. I don't say he's iron fist, but he's got to come in and not micromanage, but he's got to come in and like confident. This is how we're doing this, right? And at the same time, he's got to ask questions. Okay, but so 3 years into his election cycle, he'll be different. Okay, you take a leader and put them in charge of a tribe of people, and that leader will have to do these things exceptionally well up front, and then he'll get some grace later. But if he goes in with grace at first, he'll get ran over. Okay, so anyway.
That's right.
We're getting off track, but I'm just saying. All right, so the training that we talked about that you just alluded to earlier, Daniel, was tell them, have them tell you, show them, have them show you. So Maddie, if you go to work Monday or Tuesday or whatever day, and you need somebody to do something, then you tell them, and then you just say, so what are you doing? What did I just ask you to do? And then they'll tell you. And you do that so that you hear them and they heard you correctly.
Right.
So one time I was at a job site and I told a crew to do something, and I didn't ask them to tell me what I asked them to do. And so I left, and when I came back, it wasn't that way. And I said, what did y'all do? Oh, well, we thought. And then it turned out that there was after I had left, there was an argument between the guys about how I had said to do it. Okay, in what order. And they didn't do it in the right order, and so we had to redo it. And I was really upset, and I was like, dude, what are y'all doing? And they're like, well, we were confused. And I said, well, why didn't you just call me? Anyway, the point is I realized that day, okay, the next time I go to that same crew, hey, guys, please blah, 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 do this and that, right? What did I say? How did I say to do that? Well, you said blah, 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 blah. And then at that point, okay, you're good. Yep, that's right. See ya. All right. Then you go back and it's right. Have them repeat it to you. And that goes the same with your kids. So, because sometimes people don't hear you say what you think you said, or sometimes you might not say what you think you meant to say. So it's so important as a leader, which we are, to communicate clearly. And part of communicating with clarity is repeating it. So you can repeat it, or what I would prefer to have you do is have them repeat it to you. Right? So those are things that you can do, actionable items that you can do to change your communication. So, all right. So we don't leave any room for misunderstanding. All right. So is that clear? Mm-hmm. What did I say?
I like the short. Well, I want to get back to the short, but simple.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of letters to the members and things like that, and it's like sometimes when the leaders put it all together, it's like they're trying to not exaggerate, but just like there's way too much detail in it that really doesn't need to be in it, and so it's like it's better to do bullet points. So we've found out just through trial and error, but that's a written, communication that you're sending out, that you've got to make sure that you're going to have the one person that reads the entire thing and absorb every single thing, and you're going to have people that just go for the bullet points or the whatever, and then they'll pick up what they pick up. And so it's like we've learned a lot just through written communications to members, that what to do and what not to do. Right. But we've learned being short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah.
We get a lot more positive feedback from
Absolutely. Well, look, I have a business partner friend of mine, and I send the emails, and look, I probably over communicate. I've been told that before, and I'll send an email, and it'll be 7 paragraphs long, and really, it didn't need to be but 3 sentences. Mm-hmm. And so he gives me a hard time. You sent one of your novels to me, and I'm like, bro, that's important. Like, everything in there is super important, and I wanted it to be clear. Mm-hmm. So, but if you don't send that clear, if you're not clear, it's a tremendous defeat in coming in leadership.
Right.
Every time.
Well, and it takes me back to ownership. If you're not communicating clearly and giving them the directions that's needed, and then they don't do what needs to be done, that's on you.
It's on you.
That's right.
Yep, you own it. And so when you're really clear, you can say, dude, I spelled it out. So then you can manage expectations.
That's right.
Right? And so we'll get into all that. But look, the next one is confidence. This one's huge. People don't follow people that aren't confident. They're just not. They'll sit back. And if you want someone to race in behind you, be confident. Okay? And you have to be certain, because certainty breeds confidence. And being 100% certain, whether you're right or wrong, about what you're doing. And so, and I tell people, you have to believe in what you're saying and believe in what you're teaching. And if you don't believe it, then don't do it. And another thing, don't ever ask someone to buy into what you're trying to sell. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I've done it. I've had it done to me, and it's not good to do that.
Explain.
Well, so if let's say
Did you say explain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what
So you and I have a plan. So we're in business together,
mm-hmm.
and you want to paint the I don't know. I'm trying to think. So you want to paint the car blue.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I want to paint the car red, and you say, well, Jeremy, the car being blue would be better for our business in the long run. And I say, no, I think it'd be red would be better. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people would say, at some point, one of y'all just has to submit. Okay? And that's true, but probably true. Yeah. Or you just change the color altogether. The problem is if I concede and let you paint it the color that you let's just say you sit me down and you talk to me and you're trying to convince me to paint it blue. And I say, Daniel, it needs to be red. And we have misalignment. If I ever concede and let you paint it blue, then I would just say this. You're now in a state of discord, okay? And you don't want to be there. Because later down the road, whether it be in our negotiations or whatever, I'm going to resent you for that, okay? And it's never going away, okay? And it's relationship management, okay? Because leadership is relationship management, okay?
Yeah.
And again, I've had people, great leaders that I've worked for, that have asked me to do that. And I say, if I don't agree, look, I can't agree. I can't, because this is the thing. When I do agree, if I believe in what you're selling, then I'm in. and we are going to march forward. But anytime we have that misalignment, it creates resentment later, and it doesn't work. So if you're a leader out there, do not do that. I'm just telling you. And I don't have a degree or an MBA or anything to back that up. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
And you can probably ground it with some teaching somewhere. But based on what I know, don't do that. If you can't get buy-in, then you just wait. Okay? Until you don't have to ask for the buy-in. And in other words, you don't force someone to do it. Go ahead and try that with your spouse. Try it. You can try it with your spouse or your friend or anyone else you have a relationship with. Ask them to do something that they don't want to do, that they don't believe in, and watch what happens.
Yeah.
They'll do it, but they'll resent you for it. And it never goes away. Okay? And so what you want to do, the different approach, you might say, well, what's the approach? Well, if you really want the car blue, then, and I really want it red, then we haven't agreed on it. We don't paint it at all.
That's right.
Okay? Until at which point we're both under the agreement that it needs to be blue. And maybe that time will come and maybe it won't. But if it don't come, then don't paint it. That's right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
And we got kind of chasing rabbits there, but it's important. That's what we're doing. But confidence, clarity. And what led us to that was believing what you're saying. Because again, you have to believe in what you're saying. Okay?
One thing we do, like, if we make a bad decision at work, so like shutting down one of the amenities or something like that, and then the weather isn't as bad as what we thought it was going to be or something, and we get ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
But the one thing that the leaders at my work are great at doing is staying confident in their decision, which I think shows, they're obviously leading us, the employees, but they're also leaders where members are looking up to them as leaders in their club.
Sure.
To where it's like, okay, well, we're confident in the decision to close because of X, Y, and Z. And yes, sorry that it didn't freeze over last night or whatever, but we have to close. So I think it's before, during, and after with confidence. Even if you may have done the wrong decision, if you know that at the time you thought it was the right one and you could have gone either way, you still have to be confident even if you weren't successful.
Correct. 100%. Absolutely. If you want to remain leader, because if not, you start losing your credibility.
Right. Yeah.
So, and not by position, right? But by
That's
influence.
a terrible example on my end, but
That's good. So, look, they don't have to believe what you believe. They don't have to believe what you believe, but they have to believe that you believe what you believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can stand. Look, people go to church all the time, and on this show we're going to talk about it. But preacher goes up and preaches. The congregation, someone that doesn't know God, has to believe that man knows what he believes. And he believes what he's saying. And so I had a preacher, one of my pastors in the past, it was Randy Reese. Shout out to Randy. He's a good man, good pastor. He said that one time he had a guy come into church, and that after church, the guy walked up and said, "Man, you really do believe what you're preaching up there?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And so that's what you want. That is what we want. So, all right. So we're going to have a clear picture of, and a thorough plan on what we're communicating. It's very important to be clear and have a clear picture of what you're communicating and have a committed message. So all of that's part of being confident. Moving on to number 3 is complete. We talked about the difference between complete and clarity just briefly, but you want to have a full understanding of what you're communicating, and then you've got to be able to give them a full understanding of basically deliver it that way. So you have to understand it before you can deliver it. And look, it's your job as a leader to understand what you're asking people to do. You heard Tyler and Brandon and the leaders before, they say, we're not going to ask anybody to do anything that we wouldn't do ourselves. Well, it's kind of like a new task at work. If you have someone that you have to get to do something, guess what? You should go do it first. Because you need to understand it before you have them do it. And so that's super important. You can't have anything incomplete. You need to have a logical conclusion and information followed by action is required, right? So a little bit of follow up. So, but being complete would entail all of that. All right. So the number 4, consistent. We talked about consistency, but how important is it to be consistent? Listen, this consistency is one of the things that builds trust. Why is that?
That's true.
Why is that?
I think it makes the person who you're building trust with more confident in your capabilities. So, as a leader, if you're consistent in your communication, or every single Monday we're having this meeting at this time, and you start out. I don't know what the example is, but it builds a confidence with your employees or friendships or whatever it might be, that you're who they want to be with or look up to, or work under.
So to me, consistency is comfortable. Inconsistency is uncomfortable. And it's like as simple as that. Like anything that's inconsistent just is awkward and anxious and uncomfortable.
Stressful.
But stressful, and consistency is peace and comfort.
And trust is built in that arena.
Yes, sir.
Not in a chaos environment, right? So you want to build trust, be consistent, because you want to be predictable, right? So humans, either you're in a trustworthy environment, right, where you can live freely, or you're not. There's really no different. There's really no in between. You're in that good, safe, trusting environment, or you're not. Period. Okay. And now there can be different degrees of trust. Okay, but either you have trust or you don't. And so when you're operating in a place where you do not have trust, I guarantee you'll find inconsistency every time. And so, so inconsistency, I labeled it here as dancing, because inconsistency, you're just kind of going with the flow, and leaders don't do that. In fact, sometimes leaders go against the flow, and you know what? That's because they're leaders, and they're necessary, and it's necessary for a leader to do that from time to time. It's also necessary for leaders to go with the flow and follow. Good leaders are good followers. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the leader's job is to figure out what water he's in and navigate it, and for his people. So, I wrote that now. If you ever get to dancing, you're going to slip. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have any dance moves. But look, leaders that dance around will fall, and so being consistent is super critical. The choice of words does matter. Consistent tone and content. Across the board, be consistent. So, number 5 is courteous. Now, a lot of people might say, well, what do you call courteous communication? Well, it's exactly that. Number 1, it's positive. Leaders should never be negative. Ever. Not for any reason. Ever. A good leader is not negative. Now, again, you take a leader and you put him in an environment where there's no trust. He's going to be negative. He could be negative. Well, so I'll take it back. He could be. He shouldn't be, or she. Not, he or she should not be negative ever. But in an environment where there's distrust, it's difficult to be positive. So I would just say that, keep it positive. Optimism, not pessimism. If the leaders ever go negative, so will the people that follow them. And that's when you have problems. So we always look on the other side of the leaf. Some people say, look for the pony, look for the wet side of the, whatever people say. But courteous communication would be honest, respectful, open, and candid. So, and then we're going to talk about this. When I think about honest, respectful, open, and candid, that kind of leads me to think about listening. Listening is a huge part of communication. And so we're going to talk about that right now. But how often do you hear or see good, strong leaders listening?
All the time.
Okay. Tell me about it.
Well, I think that good, strong leaders take a step back and kind of listen to what's going on around them. A lot of times when a new leader comes into, like a new leader in a new organization, they take a few weeks to kind of chew everything up and then, maybe make changes or whatever it might be. So like new sheriff in town, I don't know this. I'm just saying. I'm assuming that when he gets in, he's not going to just go in and, like you said, like an iron fist. And he's going to go in. He's going to listen to his new employees. He's going to interview people, see what's great, what's not great, or whatever, and then start acting on it.
And he's been doing that. He started January 1st, Tyler Hooks, and he's been doing a good job with that. I was told that he's really been an active listener to the community, and that he's taking it all in and making things right. So that's great.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah, but look, active listening and passive listening, let's say active listening is really, that's an active thing. And let me tell you, it's not easy to do. For some people, it is. It comes natural, maybe, but not to some. And look, most leaders that I know, strong leaders, have trouble with this area.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that I have trouble in this area. Because as much as I like to listen, I also like to tell people what to do. Because I like to see things happen. I mean, really.
Action.
So I like to be I'm the guy that's like, man, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's do this thing. Well, along the way, I have to slow myself down. Like, hey, slow down. Let's listen to what's going on, because I don't know everything, right? Mm-hmm. And neither does anybody else. But we got to maintain that position. And listening is super critical to the leader's journey. The level of influence that the leader has is directly impacted by his ability to listen. And because, again, that's how you influence others. And so the biggest part of communication, we can be clear, complete, confident, consistent, courteous. We can be all those things and not listen and lead less, right? So you got to do all these ways that you're communicating, these 5 C's, I guess we'll call them the 5 C's, those 5 C's, and then you have to, after doing all that, and even before, you got to listen and take it in and then go from there. So the first thing, I tell my kids this all the time, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably not the right thing to say. Most of the time.
True.
It's just the way it is. And so what you want to do is be curious. And we talked about that a little bit, and I said I was going to come back to that. But being curious all the time, asking questions. That's what the leader does.
That's right.
And the best leaders that I know ask questions and never tell people what to do. Think about this. You can go through and read the Gospels. Jesus always asked questions. It will blow your mind when you go look at it through that lens. Uh-huh. And Jesus was the greatest leader that ever walked the face of the earth. Uh-huh. I'll just tell you. And when you go and read the Gospels and read about his life, it was always questions. And he told people how to live, and you look at the Sermon on the Mount where he said, "Blessed are those that do all these things." He did give instruction, but more times than not, they would come to him and say, "Well, Jesus, what about this?" And he would ask a question, and he would always speak in third person. And so, why would you not take those two things? Ask questions, be curious, and what you're doing is you're illuminating hey, look, you can figure this out for yourself. Typically, if someone comes to you and says, "Daniel, how do I do this right here?" Your kids, for example. "How do I do this, Dad?" Well, instead of telling them, if you'll ask the right questions and then they figure it out on their own, You're at the same time building confidence. Mm-hmm. And you're establishing your place as leader. Okay? And then when they say, "Dad, I cannot figure this out," then help them. Mm-hmm. And then I would even challenge you to say, "Well, hey, just give them an idea of what they should do. Don't give them the answer." Mm-hmm. And so I've found that in my trade, in my industry, if someone comes to me and says, "How do I do this?" If I can just ask them the right questions to lead them to the answer, they walk away profoundly motivated to do it later. But if I tell them, "Just do this," they didn't learn anything. So you want people to learn from you, and you want people to you want to build influence with people. That's how you do it. And third person, man. Look, Jesus spoke in third person all the time. And go back and read it. It's very interesting. But listening is key. So, and I left it here at the last part because really and truly, in a leader's communication, this is the most important, in my opinion. The leader's ability to listen to everyone, both subordinates or people that they report to, being able to listen, process, and then communicate. And then, so you communicate these 5 ways, man, you're going to be clear. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You're going to lead, period. So if you don't do these things, you're going to lead halfway, and you're not going to lead with greatness. Okay? If you have an email or a letter to someone, here's another thing. So have you ever, I've done this before. I'm just telling on myself. So as a leader, okay, here we go. This is good.
I love it.
As a leader, I've ran into some issues before, and I'm fired up about something, and I need to communicate something, and I just start replying on an email, and I'm typing it up, and I type like 4 sentences, and I'm ready to hit send, and I wait. Mm-hmm. I go back and wait, and I'll go back and read it the next day, and I will change every word in it because it did not need to be communicated like that. Mm-hmm. And so now, a lot of times you don't have that time. You've got to communicate now. Okay. If that's the case, then you have someone else read it.
Yeah.
But you don't want to. If you're a leader, and especially when you're talking to your people, you don't want to communicate the wrong thing, the wrong way. And look, you might mean well, but you're saying it in a way that is not helpful. And so send it the next day, and you'll change the words, and it's better. But don't act out of emotion. So y'all heard me talk about I struggle. Look, a lot of this stuff is born from my struggles. I struggle with emotion. I'm very passionate. And, man, I'll get fired up about something, and I don't need to. I need to slow down, relax, make it so that it's going to land well.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It takes me to all these things are very slow to build, and it takes time and consistent. And what you're saying right now, it can all just be damaged.
Yes.
And crumble so fast,
bro.
And
it's called the flesh, by the way. The flesh, I don't know what everybody believes, but the flesh and the devil can really rock he can just demobilize you by doing. As a leader, now you're still going to survive, but you're losing influence. If you're not doing these things right here, you're losing influence. Mm-hmm. And you want to get it back, go back to work on these things. That's why this is important. It's
almost like a routine.
Yeah.
That, you just said something a minute ago about how you were like, you had to step back or something. Like, when you start needing to respond to something, it's like, am I being clear? It's like you've got to get into that groove, and it goes in that sequential order of the 5 C's that you got to learn. You got to learn that.
It's reps. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's reps.
Look,
mm-hmm. So it's constant learning and reps.
Yeah.
And these aren't natural. These things that's why everybody says leadership can be taught. Mm-hmm. And it 100% can. We're taking people to school on this podcast. If they'll do these things, they'll notice a dramatic difference in their leadership. Because these aren't natural. These are taught, learned principles. You're not coming out of the womb with this stuff. Yep. In fact, you're the opposite. And you learn this in the trenches of leadership. And that's, and of course, leading, implementing. And then when you see these things work, the needle begins to move. So go back and review the email, right? Or the text. Change it. Don't react emotionally. That's
hard.
So critical
for
the
leader.
That's the hardest part for me.
It is. Me too. Hey, look, we're not nobody's immune to this. But you start acting in the flesh, and these things will not be there, and you will lose influence. So,
good.
That's
good
it.
Stuff.
All right. So, should we decide to focus on these things we will build trust, and it provides opportunity to grow in our businesses, and provide more opportunity for those coming behind us. 100%. Okay, and so I thought about doing a meaningful question today, but what was the question you asked a while ago? We're going to do this next week with Nick, but the question you asked a while ago, I want to.
Well, it was funny because it was an email. I don't think you were in here before we started recording, but there's an email that went out about one of my daughter's things, and one of the potential questions that she could be asked is, in your opinion, what is the most important quality a leader should possess?
Oh, bro, mic drop.
And I'm like, well,
this is perfect.
Okay, so I get this email, and it's just, I don't know, kind of cool.
We're asking Nick that question after next week for sure.
Yeah.
Ask it again.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the most important quality that a leader should possess?
Yeah.
And there's
So
20
we've
of them.
got 20 of them that we've said, but which one is most important? Like, that's a good question. And
I don't know the answer.
I'm really excited to hear what.
so
all the
I'll tell you
students say.
before Nick comes, I'll tell you what I think. And this has been in the balance for me for some time, and I haven't ever been asked quite that direct. But I would say there's two for me. I got to figure out which
You
one.
gotta pick one.
I'll let you pick
Maybe
one.
you go- okay.
So let me give my story.
I've got mine.
Okay, so I think that trust. So being present and being trustworthy are probably foundational. In my opinion, I got to figure out which one's more important. But if you don't have trust, you don't have anything. So I would say that trustworthy and present is a good tie there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we'll have to unpack that with. Well, let's see what Nick says next week. Okay? And then, but that's a meaningful question.
Yeah.
And I want to camp out on that for a minute. So that would be something that we could
Can I
do.
tell you mine?
Yeah.
Communication and clarity. Because think about it. You just said trust, but
Yeah.
clarity, consistency, like those build trust. So if
Yeah.
you don't have that, it's like the chicken before the egg or egg before the chicken or whatever.
Well,
type
and
thing.
that's the thing about these mandates is they can all be the most important at the right time when the time comes, and there's an argument for every single one of them.
I was going to say
There's
that.
an argument for
living.
all of them.
Dude, I would like to hear those kids answer that question.
I know.
When is this happening?
I haven't
February 8th.
I haven't told you guys this, but Sarah Jane told me she wants to be on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And I was already thinking we're gonna shoot some mini episodes.
Oh, yeah.
With each,
Kids.
like we're each gonna bring one of our kids
Oh,
on
yeah,
it.
that's great.
and ask them
That's
some
such a
of
good
these
idea.
questions. So we're doing it.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So February 8th, I want to know, I really I want to go to that.
Yeah.
Because I can only imagine what kids would say the answer to that is. How old are these kids?
So there's high schoolers and then there's middle school, which the middle schoolers don't have
Dude,
to
think
answer the
about
question.
that. Morgan
so
County's asking kids that?
That's good stuff.
Bro, that is on point.
it was pretty good.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. All right, well, we're signing off.
Yep.
Everybody good? All hearts and minds are clear?
Clear.
See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Next week.
Thank y'all.